There are seats in the front if you'd like.
Audio? We're getting feedback.
No. Anyone in the audience?
Anybody in the audience, correct?
Okay, sorry. No.
I know.
Yeah.
People want to.
Oh, yeah, so.
I do not.
Here's one, you can take this one if you want. I have mine, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Ready, Janet?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think that it's going to be off.
welcome everyone to the Town of Lewisboro, November 27, 2023 Town Board meeting. For those here, there's an exit to the front of the building and an exit here to the rear of the building. If you will, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first we'll start with the the first public hearing, which is a proposed amendment to chapter 203, tree preservation of our town code. And the focus, just so everyone is aware, the focus on the on the changes were, there were 4 items that the CAC recommended. CAC is the Conservation Advisory Council. One was to make the ordinance consistent with Westchester County on licensing. Number 2 was tighten up language to prevent clear cutting. Number 3 was correction of an error for special character districts. Number 4, there was an additional remedy penalty, which relates to tree replacement schedule being placed as a discretionary component of permit issuance, rather than in the penalties for offenses. Anybody here would like to speak about the? Oh, we need a motion. Sorry, motion to enter to open public hearing. Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Okay, I'll start with here. And anybody in the room would like to say anything regarding the tree ordinance?
Yes, 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Whoever wants to speak. How about on Zoom?
No.
No. Okay.
I have some
Any
comments.
Go ahead.
So we received this earlier in the year, and back in October, I forwarded some of my comments and concerns to the rest of the town board, of which I would like to make part of the record for people to read. I would like to read some of them to the public now. So first, regarding section 203-3, I wrote, although I appreciate the removal of the language originally suggested by Mr. Wolf pertaining to the contractors being licensed by the County of Westchester, I'm still of the opinion that homeowners should be able to choose the contractor they wish to use for tree removal. Many homeowners live on the border of Connecticut and in some places are almost part of Connecticut. These residents should be limited in should not be limited in who they are permitted to hire for this type of work. At the very least, a contractor licensed and insured in the state of Connecticut should be acceptable as well. And I think that we might be able to apply to the county for an exception. There were comments made in response to my comments, which were based on a review by Mr. Wolf of the CAC, yes, and our town supervisor, of which those responses will also, I'll make it part of the record for people to review if they so desire. Regarding section 203-4, I wrote tree removal in connection with construction, etc., should meet the vision of the homeowner and their architect to allow the building inspector to determine what is and what is not essential, quote unquote essential, is overreaching to say the least. Maybe we can have a productive conversation about a perimeter around the proposed construction outside of which the building inspector would have some discretion, but this, as written, goes too far. Maybe language like reasonably necessary to the construction and or vision. In addition, the inclusion of the additional language in this section makes it very confusing. First, we're saying that removal of trees in connection with an issued building permit, but then the next line talks about how there must be a building permit that includes the same trees. So is it not really an exception because the trees to be removed still have to be approved within the building permit application? Number 3, regarding section 203-6G, I think there may be some typos. I'll skip that part. I would like to know where the authority for these numbers came. 203-6, where we talk about the numbers as to I guess the thickness of the trees. I would like to know the authority where these numbers came from, what expert determined, for example, that a tree removed that between 24 and 30 inches is equivalent to needing 6 trees to replace it. Is there some scientific authority? The other problem I have with this amendment is that it seems to me that the wealthier of our residents who can afford the fines or the tree replacement can do whatever they want with the trees on their property because the cost is merely a small drop in the bucket for them. The rest of us will be constrained to our vision, will have our vision constrained and desire for what we want to see on our property. In addition, who decides where these trees are going to be planted? Again, when we give this much discretion to the building inspector or someone other than the homeowner, the vision of the homeowner, in my opinion, is obstructed, and people should be able to plant their property the way they see fit, the way they want to see it. 4, shouldn't this ordinance also take into consideration the size of the property upon which the trees are being removed? Shouldn't there be a difference when trees are removed from a 20-acre lot versus a 1-acre lot? Shouldn't there also be a different set of rules for people who want to put fields in for animals such as horses? Finally, I think we need to better define who the approving authority is. It cannot be the building inspector or a wetlands inspector. They have no basis to decide what trees need to be planted or how they are to be replaced. Sorry. Maybe we should allow for the resident to have the option of hiring a certified arborist to create a proposal to submit with the tree approval application. So there are responses which are in red, which people can review in conjunction with my comments. Also, I know one of our residents, Dean Travelino, submitted relatively extensive comments and suggestions, including the consideration of a tree committee, so that the homeowner who may be constrained as to what they can or cannot do with the trees on their property might have some sort of body to appeal to if they don't agree, or at least make an application to, similar to planning board, similar to zoning board when they need variance, things of that nature. I think that to make a decision tonight to adopt the amendments as proposed without giving the public an opportunity to listen to or read the comments and the responses to my comments, as well as hear or see what Mr. Travelino also suggested, would be a disservice. We need to give them a little more time. So I would be inclined to adjourn the hearing without closing it to a future date, since we are at the beginning of the winter and it doesn't, I don't think anybody's planting anything really soon. Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So I would like to make Dean's comments part of the record as well for people to review on. That's all I have.
I just want to jump on that. Yeah, I'm okay with that based upon for a couple of reasons. Number one, time of year here we're at. So it's an opportunity to process and see where we're at. Number one. Number two, based upon where we are with the master plan, especially just, I'm sorry, comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan. Where we are with that, in the first quarter, we're going to have a draft, and we're just on following up where we were incorporating zoning comments, etc. So maybe that may have some impact on it as well. And also, and I actually was processing a more recent issue. Maybe probably should have I needed time to digest it, but kind of, I was thinking about my planning board time that there's no like mandatory meet and confer process here. In other words, there's nothing bringing the building inspector and the applicant or the applicant's representative together, like at the front end of the process where they can potentially agree whether there's any exceptions or not, have an opportunity to collaborate, an opportunity about to discuss and potentially agree on when any remediation component is going to be, and come to an agreement whether there is or is not any exception, or agree to disagree. The point is, if there's some issue that comes up and there's an issue where it has to go to the courts, there should be a sufficient record, or at least is a good faith opportunity for the applicant and the building inspector as well to meet and confer, and potentially even just create a one-page document or form where if it has to be addressed in the courts, there's something where there's points of agreement and there's points of disagreement, which would be crystallized as a precursor to going to the courts and doing what needs to be done.
Now, I understand one of the purposes and one of the main goals is to prevent clear cutting. You know, when you don't want people coming in and clearing, their entire property. I can think of one house in particular that the family moved in and they cut almost every single tree off their property, and they sit on a hill. And as a result, the drainage from the property now floods the street and causes icy conditions in the wintertime and things of that nature, and things melt. And, had some other precautions been in place at that time, perhaps that could have been prevented. Sometimes neighbors don't like to tattle on their neighbors when they're doing work as well, but at least if there were some further guidelines, I understand the purpose. I just think that we need to tweak it a little more.
Can I ask John
Yeah.
a question on this?
Yeah, John actually wants to speak, so.
That's the way.
Yeah, just in your study of in the drafting process and studying the other municipalities that you've done countywide, et cetera.
Yeah.
Does anybody have anything like a meet and confer process or some kind of collaborative process?
Well, I think in the building permit process, the building inspector is involved with the homeowner. So in point number 2, I think it's there. So I don't think there's anything preventing it.
I think your point was before the application process to see if the homeowner meets any of the exemptions.
In
Requiring
other
the-
words, somebody, it's a collaborative process. Somebody has something like akin to the planning process. They want to proceed forward. They sit down and they see if everybody's on the same page as to what needs to be done.
Like a tree consultation.
Sure.
But
I
is
think
this
some
not,
towns have a tree committee.
what is the scenario though? Is like, are they to exceed the allowable number of trees cut or something like that? Is that your?
No, what I'm thinking about, I don't want there to be an issue. Let's say, okay, the permit's issued and then somebody proceeds forward and then they say, oh, well, I could do more than I was originally planning to do because my consultant, my arborist, whoever interprets for me that it comes within one or more of the applicable exceptions. And it's more an effort to avoid any kind of issues down the road, or at least narrow them if they're going to. And it's just a collaborative opportunity in the process. The way it's written, the approving authority, the building inspector, has certain obligations, which is fine, no problem. But there's nothing among them that he has to actually sit down with the applicant and confirm.
Well,
And it might be helpful, yeah.
yeah, it might be, but I'm not sure that's the case in a lot of parts of building inspector. I like to just run through.
Can I just for introduction, so folks that may not know you, John?
Yeah, I'm John Wolf. I'm chairman of the CAC and also chair of the CAC. And also on the comprehensive plan committee, which as far as I know today hasn't come up against trees, but.
Yeah, and on this, I think about, in the planning process, when anything that became, when I was on the planning board, anything became for us, it was part of the process to confer with the CAC and get their input as the application process proceeds forward.
Right. I just want to address a couple of things. One is the thing about trees per acreage. That was addressed when the tree ordinance was passed and it was brought up to the town board and it was suggested that that's what they do, but they chose not to do that. So we've already been there. The tree committee could be a good idea, but it's outside the scope of this. So if you want to rewrite the tree ordinance, you're welcome. I'm not going to do it again. Let me address the first point about the licensing in Westchester County. Number one, there's nothing to prevent out-of-state tree cutters from getting a license in Westchester County. The guy who cuts my trees is in Connecticut and he has a license. What this does is it protects the homeowner. And if they're unlicensed, you don't have to have any bond, insurance, or anything. If they're licensed, then you have some protection. It also helps our local tree cutters because they're pretty much all licensed.
And that's the case with any work that's done in town, any application that goes to the building department. If the contractor is from Connecticut, he has to be licensed in Westchester
Right.
County.
So there's nothing to prevent Connecticut, there's
Yes.
nothing to prevent out-of-state people from getting licensed.
Right.
So this is really, and it's Westchester law, so it doesn't really matter what we say, it's still Westchester law.
Right, but my comment was that even if we say they need to be licensed and insured, there might be some process whereby we could apply to the county for an exception to allow for, because we're one of the, like 3 towns on the border, literally on the border of Connecticut, wherein a company that's licensed and insured in Connecticut, we could allow that to be an exception to the licensing in Westchester only, because of the close proximity to the border and the.
Well, I mean, I guess that's possible, that's outside the scope of this because they have to deal with Westchester County. I don't think it's that big a deal to get licensed in Westchester, but because I would be surprised if it was given the guy who cuts my trees. Anyway, but my point is it doesn't prevent Connecticut people from getting a license. All right. Second section, which I think is the one that you have the most trouble with. The way it was written basically was very poor wording and allowed almost anything to happen. I will point out that we have in the original law an arborist on retainer. So if you want to get some opinion, we have an arborist that the town can draw and we share him with, I think, Bedford. But the current, the previous law really was just didn't really define the process at all, and it pretty much allowed anything to happen. This at least defines a process by which a new property meets the intent of the tree ordinance, and it's also very consistent with what happens on wetland property. So, the idea here with when this town asked the CAC to put together a tree ordinance, the idea was to protect trees. And I don't think we should have one class of people who already own their homes who have to follow certain guidelines and new homeowners do whatever they want. It's just new property. To me, it just strikes not the purpose of the law. So that's why we wrote. And maybe the wording, it's not my wording anymore, it's the attorney's wording. But anyway, and maybe the wording needs to be cleaned up a little bit, but the intent is to not let homeowners do what, or new property owners do what homeowners can't do.
Right.
So certainly they can cut the trees around their house that are dangerous. There's nothing to prevent that. But that, the idea is to align the new property with what the homeowners already have. If I'm a homeowner and all of a sudden I want to have horses, I can't cut all my trees down. So that was the third one, I think, is a no-brainer because it was a mistake. What we have added in that is under the current special character district, you could not cut dangerous trees down around your house without going before ACAR. We're trying to, and Rose Bonanno and I agreed on this language, so that we now have the
Rose being the chair of the
ACAR, right? So, and she's been involved in this process all along. But at least this way, if you live in a special character district, which I do, you can also protect your house from trees that could fall on it. So that's, and the fourth one was an addition. So this is not an update, but an addition. And it was an option for the town to have the ability for both homeowners and the building inspector or the convening authority to have an option other than just a fine. And, you know, it also, to make a point, you know, collecting $250 to $500 a tree doesn't make the environment any better. Right, so having an option to plant trees in lieu of maybe some of the fine is again in line with the intent of the tree ordinance. These numbers were chosen by a city that I think did a study and decided. I've seen some other, you know, numbers that you do, and the wetland, I think it really comes down to the wetland inspector making the decision. So you could leave it. But I think the idea is to give an option both to the homeowners and to the town to remedy the situation.
And those numbers came from the city of Poughkeepsie.
Correct.
But I've seen it also, the county executive's office just distributed a sample tree ordinance from the town of Greenberg,
Right.
which also had a similar table.
Yeah. But I think it's, you know, it's a good thing to give some options that bring trees back.
Mhm.
And, you know, when we have a wetland violation with tree cutting down, they impose something like, although it's up to the wetland inspector to determine what's done.
To me, it's just say that, you know, a tree that's taken down that's 24 to 30 inches is equivalent to the needing of 6 trees. It just seems, I think there needs to be more flexibility. And I think that, you know, that too, I mean, 6 trees, and then who decides where they're going? Where they go? We're planting them at the town park? Are we planting them on the same property?
Well, they should be on the same property, but again, we have an arborist who can weigh in on that. You know, unlike some towns, in some towns, the wetland inspector is also the tree enforcer. We're not that way.
No, we're not.
In those cases, it's simple, because he probably follows the same process, you know, North England's like. They follow the same process as they would for wetlands, so.
So, just in light of what John said and what Andrew said, so I'm just suggesting, just within 2033, if you put a B6, the approving authority shall very simply meet and confer with the tree removal permit applicant if requested in writing before making its determination to deny or grant with conditions a tree removal permit, and that's as defined in the standards of review.
I don't have any issue with that.
Yeah. So, and again, if requested, so at the time you do it, if you're requesting a meeting, it's a mandatory input from the applicant's representative. And then he can proceed forward with all the factors that are already there.
That's fine. Okay.
Right.
Dean?
Did Dean wanna?
He's got his hand up. so-
Yeah, that's fine, yeah. And I also have something that somebody wanted me to read on public comment, so, but let's go with Dean.
Dean Travelino. Okay, somebody. Dean, I'm asking you to unmute. You can always come back to him.
I made it.
Oh, good. Hey, Dean, we can hear you.
Yeah,
Got 3 minutes.
I was late putting up my hand, sorry, but a lot of the comments I heard from Rich and Andrea obviously express what I've been talking about, particularly if you want an enforceable plan. You really should give time before you make any decisions to listening to some of the local stakeholders and get what they see of the law from the practical side. Whether that's, we have many arborists in town, landscape architects and landscapers, and also consumers. I think taking the time to do it properly makes a lot of sense. Also, I think that you should also look maybe at some of the best practices that I outlined in the comments I said from some of the other towns. One thing that Rich mentions about a collaborative process is that's exactly what the tree board in Bedford is supposed to do. It's supposed to be made up of a cross-section the building inspectors on there and the wetlands inspector and some community members. And it gives a dialogue that just improves faith in the process, will, I'm sure, enhance enforcement. The other thing is something that's recommended by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. And the other thing is that they even recommend it for most tree ordinances, which is the bulk of New York State tree ordinances. They only apply to trees in the public way or trees threatening the public way. So even in those circumstances, they recommend a tree ordinance, let alone when you're going on to people's individual properties. The other thing I would say is that I don't really understand. There seems to be, well, let me back up a second. I actually read the survey responses of the master plan. And so a lot of people are talking about our rural character, maintaining our rural character. And that North Salem's agricultural exemption is meant to fill that gap between a backyard hobby farm and a commercial or a larger farm that gets an ag exemption anyway, to preserve those properties that keep open space, keep our rural character. And with all due respect, one of the speakers just said, you're going to build a barn and knock down all your trees. Where's a statement like that come from? If you're going to build a barn on your property, in my experience, or you want to build a paddock or sand ring, you want to take down trees for safety so that it's open. Now, if there's a great specimen tree, you'll see a JT farm, a few of them will have horse fences around them because it's dangerous to butt up against a tree when you're actually riding. And most other ordinances, and our last two previous ordinances said, when you're building something, including a barn, it could also be a extension to your house or garage, you're allowed to take down trees incidental to that operation, allowing the building inspector to deem, in his own opinion, what is essential, goes far beyond what a building inspector's discretionary powers are. He looks at the zoning code. If there's a problem, he gives you interpretation. If you don't like it, you go to the zoning board. If you win, you come back again. You build according to the zoning and you build according to the building codes. Then to say, well, you're building a outdoor field, a paddock. Then to say no longer can you go by the old way that we've always done it, that anything incidental to building the paddock, which I think is a very easy to understand common sense concept. Oh no, the building inspector is not essential.
Dean, I hate to cut you off, but
discretion. All right, well, that's all I'm saying. One person's
thank you.
discretion without any review.
Okay, somebody else here with a comment?
Thanks. Steve.
Right.
I have somebody on Zoom as well.
Okay, name and handle it,
Sally Frank, CAC.
if you can get up to the mic.
Oh.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, thank you. I have been involved in the CAC section of the website that discusses the tree ordinance and the benefits of trees, and I've been very familiar with it. I just want to make a couple of points because it's easy to get lost in the weeds. And one of the things that just came up now, I just want to make sure that people understand there's two purposes for this tree ordinance. One is because we want to preserve and protect trees because they're good for us. This is also to benefit the community members. This is for us. This is for all of the members. There are numerous benefits, and I have 2 pages, but I won't go through all of that. But we all know, but this is not an adversarial, should not be an adversarial situation. Secondly, the building inspector is not going to make a random decision whether you can take a tree down or not. The decisions are based on things like, is this going to affect the groundwater? Is it going to lead to a drainage problem? He's thinking wetlands. There are other things. He is making educated decisions of why or why not you can remove a tree. I think, I just don't want the impression to be that this building inspector is going to decide, no, that tree looks nice there. That's not what it's about. So secondly, I just want to make sure people understand it's, there's as much of a benefit to the individuals in this tree ordinance as there is to the trees. And as Andrea pointed out, and I know other situations where a home was clear cut, and it doesn't have to be clear cut. You know, even if 5 trees are taken down, it can have a tremendous impact on the neighborhood, depending on the makeup of that neighborhood. But we know of another case that came before the CAC where a man looked out his window in the morning and there were 2 logging trucks in front of his neighbor's property, and it was a very wooded area. And he proceeded to go find out what was wrong, what was going on. And they said, oh, we're taking all the trees down. And this neighbor, the next door lot. Well, there was nothing that he could do to prevent that. They were clear cutting it to build a new home. He ran to the town. He argued with the building. I don't know who was in that. I don't think there was a building inspector at that point, but whoever was there. Long story short, that homeowner has now had his property severely impacted by what happened to his neighbor's property. So I just want people to realize this is not just about protecting trees. It's about protecting homeowners. Okay.
So you okay, as John seemed to be, if you had that subsection 6 of meet and confer requirement before the determinations here? If requested in writing by the applicant or applicant's representative, you're okay with that?
I don't really have a problem. I don't have any issue with that. No,
Just
no, it should be
collaborative.
yeah, there's absolutely, yeah, of
Well, I
course.
think we want it to be user friendly because I think I'm not the only one on the board that's fielded complaints from residents and small business owners that our building department is difficult to deal with. I'm not here to say that's true or not true. But if we're going to amend a statute, I think that we need to do it the best way possible. We want it to be user friendly and we don't want it to be a combative process.
Right.
So this is merely discussion and suggestion. And I think, this ordinance has been, on the back burner for several months and now it's back in the forefront. And now it's the first time really that it's been on where people are actually having a chance to take a look at it again and bring it to the front of their mind. So I don't really think there's any detriment to putting it off.
Yeah, I think the point about meet and confer is, I think in general, the building inspector is communicating with the homeowner and the builder. So I don't know if we're adding a bureaucratic level that is really necessary to put in, you know what I'm saying? They're working together anyway.
Well, yeah, but the way it's written now, the approving authority shall, is a bunch of things that is required to do. So just putting the meet and confer in, if requested in writing by the applicant or applicant's representative.
Sure.
That's first
Sure.
part, and the second part is they just drafted it before the issuance of a determination.
Right.
That's, that's what I'm reading, so.
Okay.
And is what Andrew's bringing in, other people bringing in, the Dean was talking about a collaborative process. And
Yeah.
potentially furthering the intent that we're talking about, where also potentially having more buy-in from the community, if they know it's been a good process.
Right.
And then as things get.
Well,
and get more, and get, further the legislative purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, again, I just want to make the point that building inspector is, making sure you're not, going to create a problem with your sewage, your drain, your sewage fields, your whatever the septic fields. There's so many things that they know what plans are on file with the town. They are looking at things that we don't think of, that the homeowner doesn't think of. So it needs to be a collaborative process, but it is to benefit the homeowner.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Before we go on to the next, I just want to make everyone aware that the current version was drafted by town council after our last discussion. So this goes back to September 9th, I think it was.
It was done in August. I think it was distributed before Labor Day.
Yeah. So we've been sitting on this for 2 months, but this is the version that came out of our last discussion.
Yeah,
So
no,
wanna
I'm
make
just,
sure everyone's
other than
aware.
that,
Yeah.
I'm okay with it, with the,
Yeah.
it means at first, are you okay with that language?
Well, I have no problem with it. But what I'd suggest is that you close the public hearing because you're
Yeah.
going to have a new one on the new version.
Right, but let me just, I have.
Wait, no,
I know we-
when you're done, so I'm just saying
No?
For this
Okay.
version.
I just want to read, this person asked me to read this during the public hearing. So this is from Kelly Bauer, and we kind of got into this and basically, I'm going to paraphrase here. We would like to take this opportunity to ask that you consider revising the current definition of agricultural activity as it relates to what activities are exempt from the ordinance in order to help preserve the equestrian community in Lewisboro and encourage its future development. Under the existing law, the agricultural exemption applies only to the activity of an active farm, including raising and watering of livestock and using the land for growing agricultural products, but makes no provision for the equestrian facilities and backyard barns that contribute to the town's rural charm, open space, and recreational opportunities and generate jobs and significant payroll, sales, and real estate taxes. Specifically excluded from the exemption are dude ranch or similar facility. And then she goes on to say, we ask that you consider related provision containing North Salem's tree law, which reads as follows, and then there's a definition for farming operation. And I'll share this with, I think actually all of you have seen this, but yeah, so that's the.
So is Callie worried that it wouldn't come within the agricultural activity definition?
I think she wants it to be more specific. And similar to the North Salem wording.
To support equestrian
Mhm.
activities, keeping horses in livery or boarding stables.
So I move that we close public discussion of the tree ordinance and
Close the public hearing.
public hearing.
And then when you have a new version, you're going to have a new public hearing on it.
Okay.
So
So are we
I'll
actually leaving the public hearing open or we're?
The
actually
motion is to
closing
close it because
We
Okay,
have to have a new hearing.
you have to have renotice a new version of the law
right.
and schedule a new
Okay.
hearing on whatever you decide to substantively modify. So I
Okay.
suggest if
So-
you're done talking about it,
Yeah.
then you close it and then just when you're ready to have a modified version put out there, you set a new public hearing.
So
Let's have that
modified
discussion
being the modification proposed by Rich. you're saying.
Or any other modification. If it's substantive, you have to renotice it.
Well, that's what,
Yeah,
that's my
so-
question. It's like,
And that I would
It seems
consider
like-
that to be substantive,
Right.
not
It
necessarily.
seemed like we were getting that substantive. It was just that one clause, but if it's more than that, that's fine. I don't have any.
If it adds a process, even if the process
Yeah.
is the meet and confer, I think that's a substantive change that I would recommend.
Then that's fine.
Just renoticing it and
Okay.
republishing the that version of the law.
So it's on there. My proposed language is meet and confer with the tree removal applicant, open print if requested in writing or applicant's representative before making a determination to grant, deny, or grant with conditions a tree removal permit under this chapter.
And you'll type that up for us so we can,
And send it to us.
yes, thank you.
Janet, do you need
I'm
this?
just gonna listen to the video.
You want an email?
That's how I'll put it.
And can we also
And you
make Dean,
second
I second it, I just have a quick question, which is, can we make
Discussion.
Dean, discussion, yes, that's
Yes.
right. Could we also include Dean Chavalino's comments as part of the record? Then I'll second.
Discussion, any more discussion? That's it? All in favor? Aye. Okay. All right, so moving on. So next is the public hearing for the proposed override of state tax cap legislation. And just so people are aware, in case it's decided with the adopted budget to exceed the tax cap, we need to have this resolution in place before we do so. So I motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Thank you, John.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next, we have,
No, we have
You gotta
not
have public.
oh,
have public hearing.
oh, sorry.
It was,
Wait, that
you
was
made a
just- I'm
motion
sorry.
to open the public hearing.
Yes, motion to, yeah, actually, that was the intent.
Okay.
Sorry. It's a long day. But anyway, yeah, so public hearing. Anybody here have something to say about the overriding of the tax cap legislation? Up to the podium, please.
I just have a question. Simone, can you introduce yourself to our friends at home?
Okay, yes, I'm usually the friend at home, Simone from Vista. My question is, we're voting to allow you to override it if need be, or you are overriding it? What is,
Authority.
Authority to override.
do you anticipate overriding it? And
We
if,
don't know. Right now, as at the way it currently stands, we're at the tax cap,
okay, thank you.
which by the way is 2.57%. That's the tax cap, yeah. Okay, anybody else here? Comment? Anybody on Zoom? Chat?
No,
Okay. So. Motion to close public hearing on the tax cap legislation.
The override.
Second,
The
the
override.
override of tax cap. Tax cap.
Second.
Discussion,
Who made
all
the
in
motion?
favor? I
Got
did. Oh, yeah. Discussion, all in favor? Aye. Okay, next is public hearing on the, it's the 2024 preliminary budget, so I motion to open up the public hearing for the 2024 preliminary budget.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any, yeah,
So you made the motion to open it, then you made the motion to close it. Now you need to make a motion to override the tax.
oh,
Well, I thought you can make that pass law at any point after you close the public hearing, so I thought you would do
Oh.
that sometime before you adopt the budget. And
okay,
I'm
well,
not,
let's do it now.
you can move to pass local law number 5
Okay, so.
as noticed and published. That's what I would do. That would be the motion.
Okay,
So now I'm confused. So I thought we closed the public hearing and I thought then we wait to see after the public hearing having to do with the preliminary budget as to whether or not we're gonna need to override it. And then at that point, we vote to override. No,
You can vote anytime after the close of the public hearing. You can vote now. Or if you were going to defer the vote at all, I would suggest you defer it to right before you adopt the final budget, because that's when you're going to know one way or the other. But it's permissive in its nature. And I'm sure you did it last year that we voted it, that you
Yeah, we
voted
did
right
it
then.
before.
And the budget was under the cap and it became moot.
right,
So I'm not gonna let you forget
right.
whenever you pass the budget. So it's entirely up to you. If you wanted to pass it now as a permissive measure to allow you to exceed it, then you can.
Okay,
I understand.
does anyone want a motion? So I'll motion that we
Adopt local law.
adopt
number
local
4
law, is it number 4?
Yes.
Number 4,
As noticed and published.
as noticed and published for the override of state tax cap, proposed override.
Enabling.
Second. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now I'd like to motion to open the public hearing on the 2024 preliminary budget. Do I have a second?
Wouldn't we already do that?
No.
No.
I don't think it got passed. I think we went
Oh,
back
okay.
to the tax cap before there was a
Okay.
second, so.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the public hearing is open. Would anybody like to say something? No? How about on Zoom?
No one wants to say anything about the budget?
It's a great budget or.
Hold on. It appears not right now.
All
No?
right, so
Okay,
are we up to?
so Nisha will give us it's up, our
Okay.
comments, but Nisha will provide she has the spreadsheet up on the screen.
Yes.
So we made some changes after the prelim, and I would just like to notify everyone about this, so that before we.
You need to use the
Yes.
microphones for our friends at home to hear
Thank you.
and just speak a little slower.
Okay. So after the prelim, we made some changes and I would like everyone to review them. So if you see the journal revenue, so do you want me to go one by one over the line
So I
items
just,
or is it
let,
just the major one
let me just summarize. So these changes do not impact the tax cap currently.
currently?
They
Yes.
basically net out.
Net out with each other somewhere here and there. So the major item that we can discuss is the issuance of the ban, highway paving and road surfacing. 1 second. So let me pull up in the screen. Yes. So if you see that item, we currently added on 130K and it's back to 180K. So what's the decision? Because I did send an email regarding.
Yeah. So before you go there, the prior to this change, the other changes were, maybe you can describe what they were. The
Okay,
changes that did not have an impact on the tax cap.
Sure. So let's go to the general revenue. There are not
This
many
was in an email,
changes.
sorry, the email that she distributed today to the board,
Correct.
so
Okay, I'll be slow.
this should summarize.
So planning board increased it by $980, which is very minimum. We increased the revenue to compensate the expenses on the other side. Then we have sale of real property, which is increased by 9,100, that too accounting for some of the increases on the expenses side. These are the only two changes in revenue. If I go to general fund expenses, there's just one minimal $4,000 increase in the town board expenses. Going down, I see 2,500, which is accounting software support for finance for me, because there's a new regulation where we cannot have 1094 and 1095s doing manually. We need a software. And for that, we need an agency to do it. So that's the increase up there. Other than that,
We're talking about software, just it came up, just thinking about, I noticed you were talking about for tax assessor, you were seeking a grant
Yeah, that's
opportunity
in there.
for the state, yeah. Okay.
It's put back in.
Okay.
So we're covering it because there was no, it's got to be covered by our
Okay.
budget.
okay, other than that,
So, but you mentioned the
Mhm.
4,000, that's part of, that's beyond the changes that you made just for corrections and which kept us
yes,
at the
yes,
at the
yes.
cap.
If you want, that's the, I
But
have.
now you could get into the
Right.
additional changes that would impact.
Sure.
But that number would be 8 because it's.
No, it's 4.
It's 4.
It's
Okay.
4.
It's
It was
for,
correct then?
Yeah.
Okay.
yes. Moving forward, I don't have many changes. Mostly everything is same. There's a $980 software support, which is under planning board, increase in expenses based on the vendor information that we recently received. There's a net change from hospital and medical benefits from the retiree group to the Medicare refund. So it's a net wash off, 6588 minus plus and then minus 6588. So there's no net change. It's just a transfer of funds from one account to the other. So it's not impacting the tax cap.
So I presume we still have no intel this time of year as far as projected healthcare cost increases.
We got that-
we have.
You got the.
We have. Individual is 10% and family is 9%.
Right.
Okay. Moving forward, serial bond, that's an error on my part. It was a clerical error, so I added up that value because I did recalculations and I wanted to be sure. Other than that, there are no changes in general fund expenditure. Let's move on to highway. So these are highway expenditures. Except 130, we didn't make any changes, which is road resurfacing and paving. So we are putting it back to 180, but that leads to our tax cap increase of almost 4.2. So our tax cap limit is 2.57. The current rate with that increase is 4.2. So the difference is 1.63.
But that single increase isn't what took us from.
That single increase plus
That's it.
that 4,000, which I'll
There's
adjust
a
it.
$4,000 medical buyout.
Everybody's talking at once.
Yeah, so
Yes.
We didn't hear what she said.
So 130 plus 4, that's the net effect. So mostly it's contributing by 130, road resurfacing and paving.
Oh, sure. I thought we were going from 130 to 180. You're saying the whole 130 was.
No, we went from
Yes.
180 to 50 and we're back to
To
180
180,
because we were
yes.
going with the 450.
So we, yes.
130.
So the recommendation, just so everyone is aware, the recommendation was that rather than reduce the requested paving budget, which was 180, which we did for the preliminary budget, that we put that money back in, leave it at 180,000. That together with the $4,000 buyout on a health insurance is what takes us over the cap.
And so the total was 130.
Yes.
130 here and the 4,000 there. Now we had a discussion last time about this particular line, Dan, because we thought that, or the discussion was, is it really a good idea to reduce a line from 180 to 50 when the thought process was moving forward, that's a line that we want to build upon, because if we're going to be bonding, we want to be able to borrow less over time, but we don't want the impact of increasing the line item in the taxes to be overly impactful on the resident all at once. So that's why it was put back in there. So instead of going backwards, we're remaining the same at the very least. and then borrowing the difference. So instead of borrowing 450, we'd be borrowing
270.
320.
321 funded,
320.
not
Yes.
funded for.
Yes. So that's the only major change that we have in highway line, and even revenue is not, there's one more net change, the same as we did it in A fund. 5720 was added to hospital and medical insurance retiree, and it was taken out from Medicare refund line. So as far as the revenue is concerned, it's same, nothing has changed. Just the tax cap is now over 134, and it depends on what everyone is voting.
Is there anything on the revenue side that
Oh,
we can do?
Tweak.
tweak.
I'll adopt, yeah, as far as either from projected revenue from building department in 24 and or Parks and Rec.
I don't
Question
think
mark.
Park and Recs doesn't have any
Not
margin.
Parks and Rec,
Yes,
no.
they don't have.
Building department,
High building might be the only one with a little margin, but I don't want to take that chance.
So the breaking the tax cap, we would be breaking the tax cap by what percentage? 1.68%?
1.63%.
63%.
Yes.
we have that pie chart. We can
Yes,
show what the
Sure.
impact is. And again, at the last meeting, it was 50-50. Some of us wanted to bond that full 450, some of us wanted to keep the money in the budget. This is sort of a compromise, where there was some borrowing and there was some money still, where there's a restoration of that budget line for paving.
There was another scenario where we actually increased it a little bit
Yeah.
because we have
Yes.
been saying that for year after year, that we're going to try and close the gap here. And so I'll just repeat my,
And we did have an email from our incoming town highway superintendent weighing in, and he gave his opinion, which some of us on the board had indicated we would like to hear what his opinion was, so we can
Keep the
get
180.
it, you know, to keep the 180.
yeah, and I would even suggest just to show a little bit more support to add something to it, because we are not making progress. And every year.
Well, next year,
$400,000, you were essentially in effect.
Next year, we won't have the increases in salary
Correct, I
that
was
we
gonna
had
say.
this year.
We had, multiple union agreements that settled, and it was, the increase in salary compared to last year was over like 12%. So next year we'll be in a better position to maybe put in another, I don't know,
Hopefully, if
200,000.
insurance doesn't go up by 16%,
Yeah.
and whatever, that's.
Yeah.
And also
Hard to-
hopefully interest rates
Better.
be stabilizing that when we go to bond.
Well, that's another
Or
thing.
Yeah.
24.
From your
Yeah,
mouth to God's ear.
It's for-
Our rate's ideal right now, but.
Yeah,
Just throwing that out there, that would be my preference. If you're gonna break the cap, add another $40,000 to it or
on top
something
of the 180.
to actually start to make progress on it. As we have said for years and years, we are going to try to do. But you think you want to bet on next year? Okay.
Well, here we can see what the impact is to a typical taxpayer. In this case, this happens to be my property. I do this every year. So if you go to the tax calc
Oh, sure.
tab. Yeah, basically. I have two.
Nisha, can
Yeah, I
you
don't-
just
if you
make it a
zoom-
little larger for those of us with more experienced eyes?
And maybe
Okay.
get rid of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that screen there, yeah.
Set your grocery list and then.
That's the other tab over, right? But here, you could see, I kept track of like the town's tax, right? Starting with 2013, it was $17.82 per thousand.
Mhm.
To 2023, $25.62. So there's an gradual increase, and with the proposed the 2.57 tax increase, it would bring up the per thousand assessment or tax impact to $26.28. So if you look at the bottom of the table, now I don't know what the county increase will be yet. I haven't looked at their budget. They have I guess it's not adopted yet. The fire department, it was minimal. I didn't update it here, but it was a very minimal increase. Didn't really impact the numbers, so I kept it the same as last year. But you see that the town tax, your portion of your tax bill, in my case, it's 9%. And this is across the board typically for anyone's taxes. 10.86% is county, fire district, in my case, is 4.99, and the school tax is 75%.
Just hear that, your school taxes are 75% of your tax bill.
So when taxes are increased, I mean, it's not, it's a, what's the increase? It's going from, in my case, the town tax would be going from $14.78 a year to $15.16. That's a $38 increase with the current at the tax cap. And you can see in the pie chart, if you go back to the pie chart, you see the breakdown. So picture's worth 1,000 words.
At the tax cap.
At the tax cap.
And the
Now-
town tax is blue.
It's the blue sliver, right? And then the red is the county, and the green is the fire district, and the purple is.
School.
The
Okay, let's see.
75.28%.
So now if you go back to tax calc and you put in the percentage, assuming we break the cap with this new, what we just discussed, up above on the right, 2.57. And if you change that to,
4 point some.
yeah. So again, it's a $38 increase, but
4.2.
yeah, 4.2. So it went from $38 to $62. So that's the increase, but I'm still 9.17% of the tax bill. And then, yes, pie chart would be representative, it's still much smaller sliver.
So you pay more than 8 times the amount of tax dollars to the school as you do to the town.
Yes.
Correct.
Correct.
So the decision here is, do we want to, I know Dan wants to add more to the paving line, but with the 320, if you take it all into consideration, I think we're somewhere around 9. If you go back to your spreadsheet, I think we're like
Yes.
900 something thousand for the paving budget, if you include chips, which is a consolidated highway.
Yes, 1 second.
Uh,
Gonna be
Actually,
130 plus 300. This
So-
300 line.
Including the anticipated.
yeah, so if you take the 320 from bonding, the 180, and that's what, 360? What does that
300.
add up to?
Oh. So it's
So if you add 320 to 360 and the 180, that's 6, 780. It's 960.
And last year, just by contrast, all in.
Well, last year we didn't.
I know,
Oh,
that
right,
was
yeah,
surprising.
so it was basically, last year was, if you look at the
180.
23 budget, it's 180 plus the
250.
250.
Plus the-
Yeah, which is roughly, yeah,
Oh.
2, 3, 4, 420.
Right, so the point is we're doubling, we're more than doubling our, right? We're more than
Paving
doubling our
budget?
investment. Our budgetary investment in the roads.
Right.
23 over into 24, we're more than doubling that investment.
And we're doing that by a combination of borrowing and increasing the budget line, which of course has an increase, results in a tax increase higher than the tax cap.
Okay. It's fine.
And I had said
So-
before that, I wouldn't have a problem with breaking the tax cap. I mean, I didn't want to break it by 5 or 10%. But if we were gonna break it slightly, as long as it was something tangible that the residents were gonna be seeing immediately, that was a positive. Because every time I talk to some of our taxpayers, they're always like, what am I getting from him? And I don't get garbage pickup. I don't have to worry about sewer. I don't understand. What am I paying for? At least with this particular tax increase, they get to see where their money's going. I mean, I hate to say it, because I'd be the last person to want to break the tax cap, but in this
Yeah.
particular circumstance.
But if you didn't break the tax cap and we kept the original scenario that's in the preliminary budget, you just have the debt service, which kicks in 2025. And
I
you
can
know,
show those.
We'll be in a better
calculations.
position.
Well, I understand the benefit
Yeah.
of to what you're saying, but the problem is then this line that had been, that we had been trying to build on gets depleted from 180 to 50. We're going backwards. Next year, we come to the scenario where, let's say we have to crunch numbers again for whatever unanticipated reason. And we're like, well, we have to get it back to 180. Where's that money coming from?
Yeah.
And so
This way, we're not kicking it down
that's right.
the road.
I don't
If
want to
you'll
go
pardon the
backwards
expression.
and then run into difficulty next year where we can't even put this. Then we'll be like almost 2 years behind in building on it because we've taken away and then maybe have been able to get back to the 180 on this
Right.
line. I understand the benefits of what you're saying. Totally understand, but I think in the long term. That this would be better, and then we continue to build upon this, and as we build upon this. By a percentage every year, the less we have to bond.
Yeah, and remember, it's not like we intend to pay this much, so it's not like the residents are paying more in this scenario. They're just, it's like a cash flow thing, so it's, yes, it's in your taxes instead of in a bond repayment, at some other point or whatever. So,
I mean, I think the goal is to eventually have a line over time, maybe not in our lifetime, but at least on the board, but in time that stands on its own.
And
Well, it's this line, but you just increase it.
And that stands on its own at
Oh,
a point in
okay.
time where we
Yeah.
don't have to bond, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, we haven't been bonding.
No, we haven't. But if we want to do what the residents
Yeah.
would like us to do with the roads, I think it's a necessity
Yeah.
at this point, but I don't want it to go on forever.
Mhm.
I don't think any of us want it to go on forever, but the only way it won't go on forever is by slowly, kind of adding to your savings, so to speak.
Mhm.
So, that's what we'll be doing every year, adding to this number, and then we don't have to borrow as much. We're not putting as much on the credit card, so to speak.
Right. I mean, I'm looking at it from the perspective of the taxpayer, trying to minimize the impact on them. This is obviously it's a middle of the road, where we're not putting the full amount on that line and further impacting the taxpayer.
I know.
It's this consensus in the community that we should be.
Well, that's the thing.
investing in
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
roads, and this is what we're doing by taking a tangible first step in that direction.
on the road to taking care of our roads.
There you
It's
go.
something that I've received input on a regular basis as well from my fellow constituents. And it's important that we make sure that our roads are safe.
So to Rich's original point, I mean, whether we can find any other revenue line that can be increased, I don't think so, but Nisha's nodding no.
No.
She squeezed the numbers as
Yes.
much as they can be squeezed.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I can show you the debt schedule as well for a better understanding. 1 second. So these were the earlier numbers that I provided. Town board, for example, we were taking highway truck, one of the truck for this year, and next year another one. So this was the division, principal and interest division for that. For paving, if we take 450, these are the payments, principal and interest. If we take 450 complete ban, these are the yearly payments starting from 2025.
Zoom in.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
So let me. So these, for the paving, these are the ban payments if we issue a complete 450. So in 2024, there's no principal and interest payment. In 2025, there's an interest payment of 20,000, and going forward, 2026, there's 46,000, and inconsistent, it's close to 46 to 48,000 in addition to the ban, interest, principal and interest every year.
So if we borrowed the
450 completely and
it would
not
cost
increase the tax cap.
$46,000 a year, principal and interest.
Yes. So that is the scenario when we are not breaking the tax cap. Other than that, the other scenario is where we are
Hold
baking.
on,
Sure.
we should note that it means that we're, and the taxpayers are paying an extra $221,000 for
Sure.
that same payment, right? We're paying interest.
Correct, over
In over
And
10
whereas
years.
If it was in the cash budget,
over 15 years.
yeah.
Which
now-
is our goal,
Now,
to
on a
eventually
capital
get it.
basis, maybe the borrowing and postponing and not charging taxpayers, maybe they have better places to invest money and. It nets out better than the interest costs that they end up paying here. I don't know, but this is a place where you would have a guaranteed savings for the taxpayer if you said, and just again, for perspective. To close the gap, we're talking about $400,000, give or take, right? That we need to plug back into the cash budget for the roads. And there's roughly 4,000 households in the town. So that's about $100 a year per household to make that gap up. That's what we're talking about for all this back and.
But
Could you just,
it's not gonna be $100 more because this is going to be replacing debt that's coming off.
Yes, it's going to increase the
So
debt.
It
for-
may cost more to pay for the paving of the roads, but it's not necessarily costing more to the taxpayer because we're replacing debt that's coming off the books. And we're
Yes,
putting debt in
yes.
its place,
There's
so
still-
the
there's still
amount's supposed to
costs
be,
there.
well, the
There's
paving,
still costs.
yes. But what I'm saying is they're not going to feel the additional
That's
payment
different.
because, right. I'm not
Yes,
saying it's not gonna
Okay.
cost more to pay the roads, I'm
Okay.
saying that the
I'm just-
taxpayer
just
won't
pointing that
feel
out.
the difference because it's replacing debt that's coming off. the books.
On that point, can you just
Yes,
refresh my
there's,
recollection, how
uh,
much do we have coming,
There's a 2009 bond, as far as I remember.
retiring, how much are we retiring of the full?
160 was the value. I can pull up that Excel 1 second.
Right, so it's, okay. So we're retiring 160 principal.
Yes.
Okay,
So this is the old one. I don't have the newer version of it because I had to consult bond counsel for that. Let me increase the size and start sharing things.
that answers the question for me, just we're retiring about.
No, but it would be good to
Um,
see the
yes.
outstanding debt.
If you
how
can
it's
see that.
declined,
that's-
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, with FDs in it.
Share screen. So this was the ban, all the bonds and the bans that we have for the net position for the town. So if you see 2020, oh, it's too,
Yeah,
It's way too small.
okay, so because it's a huge Excel. 2023, if you see the changes, the last line is the main important one. If you see the changes over the years.
which line, can you highlight which line we're talking about?
She's scrolling over, give her second.
So
There we go.
It's the total,
this is the one, the proposed debt after borrowing the new money, but this exactly has the 300,000, which was, so this line is not applicable out here. So it was 1.4 in 2020, which year are we talking about? 2021. Going forward in 2022, our debt was 1.2 million. Now it went to 1.0, 1.07. So proposed, obviously, it'll not go up to 1.2 because 2.1 million of sidewalk hasn't been approved. And then it's going to be close to, say, 30,000-40,000 extra. So it's going to be, it's not going to make a huge impact. So we already had this line for the debt for 1.4, 1.2. And right now we are low just because we are about to pay off.
So
this-
total annual debt service is still significantly less than it was a few years ago.
Yes, correct.
which is why I find not breaking the tax cap more attractive,
Yes.
because we have this working in our favor.
Yes, the net difference from last year is all just 19,000, but from previous year, it has gone down from 149 to 190 and now 19. So it has gone down over the years. So borrowing might not be a bad idea if you don't want to break the tax cap. And I can show you the other descriptions. 1 second. This one. So if if I see the scenario which is being right now proposed, let me increase the size. So if we borrow 450, these are the yearly payments. And if we borrow 320, these are the yearly payments for the ban proposed.
So when we work on the 2025 budget, this is the number that gets plugged into the spreadsheet
Sure,
under the
yes,
and debt
correct.
service expenses.
For the ban, yes.
Yeah.
So in 2024, there's no impact. In 2025, if we borrow completely 450, 20,000 is the impact. If we borrow 320, it's 14,000, and going forward 4632. So there's like a $10,000 to $15,000 difference in the debt service
So,
just by taking over the tax cap and not doing it.
so Tony, what's your position as to how we fund this? We should stay at the cap. And
I would like for this year, I would like to borrow next
And
year.
then build on top of it.
Right, so that's what I mean by next year being the starting point to build that up.
So-
Just because this year the anomaly is all the union agreements that we had to
I understand that. I think.
catch up 3 years of salary increases.
I know what your reasoning is, however, I think going backwards is dangerous. I think to
Why?
go from 50 to jump to 180.
why do you think it's backwards if the total amount that we're spending ends up being more?
Because it's supposed to be, technically speaking, 180, and we should be building on that, right? Instead, we're going back to 50,000 and hoping that next year we'll be able to get where? 300,000, 400,000? That's gonna be a huge, that's gonna take up almost the entire tax cap increase. What, to make up the difference and then build upon it for next year, it could be the entire tax
But if
cap.
we borrow it, our total debt service is still lower than it was a few years ago.
But that's not the point. The point is, how do we, the long-term goal is to move the town to have a self-sufficient paving line in the budget and away from borrowing. So we want to reduce the borrowing and having a more healthy, independent paving line in the budget.
It's sustainable that way.
What she said.
When you go backwards,
Mhm.
when you go backwards, 2 steps to jump ahead 4 is much
Yeah,
more
but-
difficult.
Yeah, but I'm looking at it again, the salary, that was a major impact to our
No, you're
to our,
right.
to our budget,
I'm
and
not arguing that.
yeah, and next year, I think,
I'm just.
so rather than a 12% bump up in everyone's, to take all
Right.
the unions, it'll be 3% or 3.5 or,
Right.
and so the savings from that is what we could potentially put back into the paving line.
Potentially,
Yeah, assuming, well, essentially,
but we can't, we're guessing. And 1.63% break in the cap.
Sorry, pie charts. Can you go back to the
Back
pie
to the pie chart.
charts?
Oh, sure.
What do you think, Mary?
We're not breaking the tax cap by 5% or 10% or
It's
8%.
1.63.
We're going over by 1.63%. I'm not saying that any increase is insignificant, but taking into consideration the fact that our taxpayers want to see what they're getting for their money, and I understand the borrowing, they would still be seeing, but I think we're doing ourselves a disservice as planners and long-term planners to do that.
Good. I just want to know what Mary thinks.
I have it. I think that we can't go back to $50,000. If it's only 1.63, I really think we should say. Could you possibly show what it's like going with 120 instead of 130? How much it would,
120 to 130, what?
instead of
130, adding
okay,
130,000 back into that line, adding 120,000 back into that line.
and it's only 10,000.
It's only 10,000. It's a
That
very
wouldn't make
minimal
any-
amount.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't make much. of a
I
difference.
would rather go with the 130.
Okay, so make a motion to it, right?
Not yet.
Well, we have some
Why not?
time to think about it.
You have to close the public hearing.
Yeah, we should close that.
I think it was enough.
No,
No,
Close the public hearing.
Yeah. Okay, motion to
Wait,
close.
wait, are
Still on?
I think,
you had a question.
no, I want to know if if we decide to go with the 130, are you okay with that?
He's not thrilled.
I'm not thrilled, but because I don't like breaking a tax cut.
But if we're doing it to make a more sustainable highway budget and take care of the roads in a sustainable manner.
I get that. I would have liked to start that process next year, but I understand the pros and cons, so.
Come on, Tony,
But it
kick off
Well,
your
we don't have
first
to make a-
next 2 years on a high note.
He broke the tax cut. No,
We're
yeah.
all gonna get that. All of us are gonna get that.
No, it's, there's pluses and minuses, and, you know, I see everyone's, well, I mean, your input is obviously, you know, very valuable here, so. But we're working on closing the public hearing, so.
Right, motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
So we can.
Well, we have a deadline.
Well,
The deadline.
the deadline is December 20th.
20, yes.
Okay,
So if we,
Well,
do we want to take some time to go back and have Nisha go through the numbers again and one more time? and see?
I'll make a motion to adopt the budget. I think we're ready to go.
With the 130.
With, yeah.
Or with.
You motion to adopt the preliminary budget
As,
with that modification.
With that
right?
modification.
That's, and there was modification tonight.
There were two modifications, basically. I mean, there's multiple. The other ones
Yes.
were corrections. and-
Corrections or waive off, it's like
the
what,
modifications is stated this evening, and the 130 line, we're putting back to the total 180. Move to adopt the budget for 20.
So we're all clear on that. It's 130, not 180.
and adding 130.
We're adding
with an
130.
adding
130 back in, so the total was.
Okay, 180, yes.
Yes.
To the pay.
To the pay.
So I second Rich's motion.
Roll call.
Are you gonna breathe?
Council.
Are you gonna breathe?
Okay, roll call. Rich,
Aye.
Mary Shaw, aye.
Tony, no.
Andrew Lindo, yes.
Dan Willis, yes.
Okay.
Good. Let it pass.
It's adopted. Okay.
Good work.
Thank you, Nisha.
Thank you. Thank you, Nisha.
Mhm.
Okay, next we have public comment number 1. So anybody here would like to comment?
Good evening. My name is Daniela Goldman. I have been a resident in Lewisboro since 2008. I stand before you today with heavy heart, addressing a matter that goes beyond politics and policy, a matter that strikes at the very core of our values as a community. It is concerning when those entrusted with representing us express views that sow the seeds of division and intolerance. Recently, Dan Welsh has made Facebook posts that not just differing opinions, but have crossed a line into the realm of anti-Semitism. As a community that values diversity, inclusion, and mutual respect, we cannot turn a blind eye to such sentiments. Anti-Semitism has no place in our town or any community. Let me read you a quote from Mr. Welsh's post. Hamas is not the issue. If Hamas did not exist after being caged up for several generations and under blockade for 15 years with all hope crushed, somebody would have come out and done something violent. The root of the problem is not one particular terrorist group, it's the occupation and the fact that since the formation of Israel, nobody did anything to help the 750,000 violently displaced Palestinians get back on their feet. Instead, Israel continues to take away more land and resources and mow the lawn periodically to make sure it was understood that any resistance would be met with unbearable pain. And then when in another post, which was supposedly your apology, you stated, I acknowledge that October 7th attacks were traumatic, terrible, and triggering, and it's natural to want to respond in big, violent ways. 9/11 was an analogous event for Americans, and our response was tragic and only made things worse. US policy in that follow-up and well before failed to acknowledge the humanity and history of the people on the other side of the bombs and treated the issue as being driven by cartoon-like arch villains. Like the United States, Israel inoculates its citizens in a story of specialness and higher moral standing. In Israel's case, the very real historic harms done to Jewish people, and in the US, a more contrived and engineered sense that bad guys want to hurt us, underpins the feelings of righteousness that is necessary to drive these violent responses. His words have hurt members of our community and have the potential to fracture the unity that binds us together. For the sake of maintaining the trust and harmony that our community deserves, it is my sincere belief that this board member should consider resigning from his position. Public servants should be exemplars of the values we hold dear, fostering an environment where everybody feels welcome. We must demonstrate both to ourselves and to the broader world that we stand united against discrimination and prejudice. In times like this, we must rise above partisan lines and reaffirm our commitment to the fair shared values that make our community strong. Let us send a clear message that anti-Semitism has no place in our town and that we will not tolerate any form of bigotry from those who represent us. Dan Welsh, I ask you to resign. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Good evening, board members. My name is Elizabeth Hammerling, and I'm a long-standing Jewish resident of the Lewisboro community for over 20 years. My family and I have always belonged to a local Jewish house of worship and have felt included and welcomed in this town. Several years ago, when swastikas appeared at Lewisboro Elementary School, we led a Hanukkah celebration there for all to see, to show that we will not be intimidated, diminished, or silenced. Their brutal attacks on innocent Israelis on October 7th have stirred our emotions once again. We have participated in a peace march in Mount Kisco, attended information sessions at our synagogue, and have engaged in open dialogue with others in the community, with those that share and those that oppose our views. We have always taught our children to stand for what is right, whether it is popular or not. Dan Welsh is not right for Lewisboro, and I am here to say that publicly. Dan is a sitting board member and the deputy town supervisor. He is the face of the town when Tony is unavailable. His views and beliefs matter. Dan's views on the Israeli-Hamas war are disturbing, ignorant, and hurtful. While he is entitled to his own personal opinion, guaranteed by this great country's constitution, he should not be in the position of representing me or my family. He should not represent anyone who stands for humanity. He should not intentionally offend the townspeople which he represents. Dan, I request that you step down from your elected position immediately. For those in attendance here tonight, I hope you realize that if Dan stays in his current position, he represents you and Lewisboro locally, to the county and the state of New York, and will continue to voice an ignorant viewpoint. My question to the board also is, where are the Israeli and Ukrainian flags now? Thank you.
Anybody else here like to speak?
Adam Wiles, Vista. I didn't come with prepared remarks, but I did think it was worth it to come here and just to say that it's my opinion that everyone's viewpoint is important, but I think there's a difference between a regular person and someone who is representing an entire town's opinion. This is one of the most divisive topics there is at the moment. And I believe if someone is representing an entire town, they should be more careful at stating their opinion openly, as strongly as you did on Facebook. I read your posts. Personally, I was outraged. That doesn't mean that if you thought my opinions were different, that would be up to you, but I don't represent the town. I really think you should strongly consider understanding that there are many people in this town who are offended. And if you represent them, you should probably maybe not change your opinions, but maybe consider softer messaging. Thank you.
Anyone else? Speak. So.
I didn't bring, Simone from Vista. I didn't bring anything written down. I'm speaking as a human being, and I was personally hurt by what you wrote. You do have the right to feel the way you do. I'm an attorney and I fight for the rights of people to say negative things about me. But this kind of goes beyond, because we're all living here together and we are a unified Lewisboro, regardless of party lines. And you hurt a lot of people by what you said. It was very anti-Semitic. I wrote back to you, you choose never to engage with me, but I understand why. It was anti-American. I really do feel you don't like this country. Possibly you self-loathe, I don't know, but you certainly expressed a lot of anti-Semitic views. And I tried to make it clear to people before the vote came out, when in your polling of the board, you literally stated 3 days after we watched girls raped over and over and dragged through naked in the streets, babies beheaded, all of these horrible things that any human, I don't even understand where you come from. And your statement at the polling of the board 3 days after was, well, I wasn't going to speak, but well, there's no electricity in Gaza. Insane. And I posted it everywhere. I begged everyone to listen. I don't know, but I knew who you were. My husband knew who you were. You know who you are. And I don't think you have a place on this board. You are entitled to your personal opinions. Go spew your hatred wherever. I don't think Lewisboro stands for what you stand for. And I strongly would consider resigning. And I think you should be censured by this board. I think every single person here should censure you. That's it.
Hi, thanks for hearing us. I am also, oh, I'm sorry, Mike Gordon, South Salem, Wacabuck. I'm also a Jewish member of the community and feel very strongly, based on some of my relatives and a lot of my more distant relatives were executed in the Holocaust. And I feel very strongly not only that Israel has a right to exist, but that there is a need for Israel to exist. Having said that, to say that Hamas believes they are entitled is part of the horror of it. They believe they are entitled, and that is improper. I do not consider that anti-Semitic. To say that there are human beings on the other side as well, I do not consider that anti-Semitic. And I think that had we had public officials with the courage, now I am not equating this with the Holocaust in any way, shape, or form. This is Netanyahu is who he is. He's not Hitler. But had we had public officials with the courage at that time to recognize in Germany that the Jews were human beings and should be considered, then perhaps we could have avoided. I would support the courage of a public official to ask us to think and to recognize that there are human beings and compassion for all sides. That's my feeling. So I would, I guess, ask Dan not to resign, to consider, the courage that it takes for a public official to stand up and speak as he does, to make us think, to help us.
Anyone else want to speak?
Good evening. My name is Peter Gross, and I'm a resident of South Salem. A couple of other things I am, which might give some background to my comments. I am Jewish. I am the son of a mother who escaped from Nazi Germany as a child and came to the United States by herself. I am the father of a son who was shot by a terrorist from Gaza, shot through the head. I have a lot of stake in this conversation. It's a subject that I have given a lot of thought to over the years. First of all, I can tell you from personal knowledge, Dan Welsh is no anti-Semite. That is one of the most scandalous things I've heard in a long time about anybody on this board. I know Dan well. I know his views about a lot of things. Dan is an honest person. He's an outspoken person. He's a very principled person, and he is no anti-Semite. Dan is a person who believes in looking at the humanity on both sides. He says things sometimes that some of us might find uncomfortable, but I've never found them to be said with any hostility or any attempt to be divisive. And I think that, in this community, if we can't tolerate, oh, by the way, Dan's views are shared by, I think now, a majority of Americans. If not a majority of Americans, at least a very substantial part, particularly younger Americans. People who agree that we support Israel too much. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying this is not a way out of line view. This is a view that represents the views of many, many Americans. And if Dan's plea is let's look at the humanity on the other side, let's look at who is being killed now, look at the numbers of people that are being killed and maimed, the children that are dying in this. If he says keep that in mind as we think about these issues, I say bravo to Dan for bringing that stuff up. And the idea that the longest serving, and in my view, one of the best serving members of this board should have to resign because you don't like his views, even though it's in accord with not only his principles and a lot of others, but with a lot of views in the United States. I think, it's an attempt by some people who want to only look at their side of things and not look at the other side of things to take over the dialogue of a meeting like this and demand a resignation of somebody who has been a wonderful public servant for this group. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to speak? Karen.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what everybody said because I just walked in.
Your name and Hamlet.
I'm Karen Conti and I live in South Salem. And I've known Dan a pretty long time. I remember the first time we met, and when I saw the post, and it was only because people were pointing toward it, I was kind of like, I believe in world peace, and I wish that we didn't have any guns and we didn't have any war, and that there wasn't any reasons for war. And I don't support war, but I feel that having only that little teeny one sentence you said sees one part of the story, and that if I had time to talk to you, that maybe I can talk to you about other parts of the story and not say, I don't want any Palestinian people being killed, but I also don't want Israel to have bombs and rockets thrown at it and people in Israel hurt. And my feeling is that your sentiment is misdirected at Israel, and it should really be directed toward Hamas and toward Iran and Syria and Egypt and Jordan and the countries who won't give the Palestinian people a home. I think there's been 7 wars, and even the first, Israel was founded in 1948, and 4 days after they were founded, part of the I don't know what you call it, you know, the way the country got formed, they said, well, you can have Israel and the Palestinian people can have their own state, and they refused. And then there was a war, and there were 7 countries against Israel, and Israel beat them all. And they said again, Palestinian people, if you want to go live here and there and there, you know, you can live where, but all the other countries, Arab nations said, no, we don't want the Palestinians to live with us. And so it's been a situation that is almost artificially created. I mean, Israel got created. I mean, lots of countries got created after World War II, and it's perpetuated for years and years and years. And so I can't believe that you would be anti-Semitic. I mean, you know, we spent an awful lot of time, so we're talking about everything in the world. But the way you wrote it, I could see how it's so easily misconstrued. And it's really unfortunate that, you know, I think it's come to this, and there's many, many points of view, but personally, I don't support Netanyahu. I don't support what he's doing, but he's the guy in charge. What are we going to do?
Anyone else here would like to speak? About on Zoom?
Yes. Kathy Deutsch, I'm asking you to unmute. We have 3 minutes.
Hi. This is a very sobering and somber meeting. I feel my heart is in my throat listening to so many of my Jewish neighbors speaking. I live in South Salem. I am Jewish, and I found his comments to be so utterly disturbing, profoundly inappropriate to come from a board member. Just because you can say something doesn't mean you should. Now that social media has become the platform for everybody, we think we could just open our mouths and say things that are destructive to other people, that is frightening to other people. I feel threatened by his comments. And that's really not how I have ever felt in my life living here in South Salem. I believe that it was anti-Semitic. He said that the Israelis are performing a genocide of Palestine. It is quite the opposite. We are the people who have been hunted and killed for decades and generations and thousands of years. So where you pick this out from, I have no idea. But you seem to believe very strongly that somehow this is the problem of instigation by Jewish people. And I will not repeat what the first speaker so eloquently spoke of, your quoted many of the things that you said, which were anti-Semitic tropes, were gaslighting. And I would like to see some sort of policy brought forth from this board to remove him from his position, because I do not feel that I have in front of me a person that I have confidence in, that I have safety in, that represents all of the people of Lewisboro. If somebody had come out publicly speaking out against Black and brown people or queer people or Asian people, we would have immediately had all of our red flags up saying, oh, this isn't acceptable, this isn't appropriate. We have to that's racism, that's marginalism. But what he did was of a similar ilk. And yet somehow we're able to discuss whether that's right or wrong. It is wrong. I ask you to resign, or I ask Tony and the board to vote to have him removed. I, as a Jew, must speak out now because we are threatened. Thank you.
right, thank you, Kathy. Sybil Patry, I'm asking you to unmute.
Hi, my name is Sybil Patry. I live in Wacabuck and I am of Indian descent. And honestly, I think I'm one of your few constituents of color. I speak with my voice shaking, but I will speak on humanity. I'm here for public comment in support of Dan Welsh's statement. Dan is being targeted by certain community members, as we've witnessed. The most consistent ethical position is to always speak out against mass murder, especially of children and innocent civilians. And that's exactly what Dan is doing. An estimated 5,500 children have been killed in the Gaza Strip since October 7th, amid widespread airstrikes by the Israeli military. Hundreds more are reported missing. Since October 7th, one child in Gaza has been killed every 10 minutes on average. To all of the people, including town board members, criticizing Dan's views, why are Palestinian children's lives less important than your children's or your semantics? America has signed off on $14 billion and we're funding the mass murder of Palestinian children. It's on TV and we can all see it. Maybe you're choosing not to see it, but that says more about you than what's happening. Israel continues to blatantly violate international law, dropping white phosphorus from the sky, dispersing death in all directions, shedding blood, shelling neighborhoods, striking schools, hospitals, and universities, bombing churches and mosques, wiping out families, and ethnically cleansing an entire region in a both callous and systemic manner. What would you call this? I will support any person in office who is standing up for the most marginalized, which at this moment is Palestinian children. Dan is using his platform and his privilege to use a critical lens to examine how the US government and all of us are funding an ethnic cleansing. I cannot sleep at night. History will be Dan's friends more than anyone against him. Support for human rights of Palestinians is not anti-Semitic. And using that word in particular is a scare tactic to try to keep us from speaking up against oppression. Because the truth is that anyone who stands for liberation stands for all people. And that, of course, includes Jews. I stand with Dan on his calls against mass murder against defenseless citizens of Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you, Sybil, and I'm asking Jim O'Connor to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Well done, Dan. You finally turned this community against each other. You've torn them apart. I don't want to pile on, but I've been shouting from the rooftop explaining your character over the last couple of years. You've been on this board for 16 years and basically have done nothing except promote your sustainable Westchester and pocketing money. Believe it or not, I don't think you should resign. Consequences, elections have consequences. I believe that as an elected official, you went a little crazy. But I believe what you put down in words will stay with you for the rest of your life. And that speaks truth of who you are. And I'm not shocked, but I think that the people in this town who didn't listen to the Zoom and come to these meetings over the last couple of years would have had some insight on who you are. But again, I reiterate, I don't believe you should resign. Elections have consequences. I don't think that you should go on an apology tour because that's not who you are. You stand by your convictions and that's who you are. Hopefully, I think more than likely this will be your last term because I did hear somebody mentioned to me recently that you were just looking to pad your pension. But again, that's your character. So again, I don't think you should resign. I think you should stand there and take the slings and arrows. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Jim. Next, I have a Zoom user. If you could state your name, full name and hamlet, please.
Hello, everyone. This is Letitia Stapleton from Golden's Bridge. And I just wanted to say thank you, Dan, for all that you do. I believe in you, and I'm grateful to have you on board.
Is that it, Letitia?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Letitia. And that's it.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just, normally wouldn't be any response, I'm not responding. I just want to say that I'm acknowledging everything that everybody said. I'm listening. I know everybody has their own life experiences and from wherever they come from, and it's all real and valid. And you know, we're going to continue this dialogue. This is not the place to, you know, this is obviously very complex, and you know, I'm not going to continue that here. But I heard you all. I understand.
Yeah, we have, yeah, I actually, there were a couple emails, basically. I'm not gonna read them here because it's basically the same thing that's already been said.
Robin Gersten wanted hers read.
Yeah.
I have to read
Well,
the ones
I'm
that-
reading this.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I have Linda Presswolf. who
Oh.
raised her
Yeah,
hand.
I'm reading this, so.
Can I call on her or no?
Sure.
Well, I could, yeah.
Why don't we let Linda go
Well, this
first
is
and then you
probably
read
about
Henry.
this, yeah, okay. I just want to know that I have that. Okay, read it.
Okay. Linda, I'm asking you to unmute.
Yes, thank you. My husband sent a letter to the town board. And
I'm gonna read it, Linda. I have it.
thank you. All right, thank you.
Go, read it.
Yeah, go ahead, look. This was sent from Henry Wolf. He asked me to read this at the meeting. To Lewisboro Town Board members from Henry F. Wolf. Dan Welsh's actions this past weekend at a pro-Palestinian rally in White Plains is a total affront to every Jew. His activities were posted to Facebook and have since been taken down, however, are no less offensive. As a Holocaust survivor and firsthand witness to the atrocities committed by the Nazis, and one who lost my entire family, mother, father, and sister, I cannot and should not have to tolerate the bias and anti-Semitism exhibited by my elected official. An elected official who is supposed to represent all of his constituents and is responsible to act on their collective behalf. By his actions this weekend, he has failed in this regard. I implore this board to take appropriate action and censure Dan Welsh and demand he make a public apology to all Jews in Lewisboro. With great sadness, Henry F. Wolf, Cross River, New York.
One more person.
One more.
Mario Burlock, I'm asking you to unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So I am Jewish. I am in complete support of Israel. And I'm not here to have a discussion about international politics and world affairs. And I find it despicable that any board member in this town would use their pulpit to spew out their individual opinions and hatred on an international matter. There's so many issues that are facing this town. Why is this even a subject for us to be discussing? It's just, it's very shameful of Dan. And I urge him to do the right thing and resign and to keep his opinions to himself. And if he wishes to express them, to do it not as an elected town official. Thank you very much for hearing me out.
Thank you, Mario. That's it.
That's it.
Okay.
And just note also that my opinions were not expressed as a town official, they were on my personal page, and it was actually other people who copied them into all the different forums, which is, if they want to do that, that's fine. But
Well, you,
just-
you asking to be recognized, that we're supposed to be following protocols. If you're asking the way we're supposed to, then ask the supervisor to speak and have them recognize you. That's we're supposed to follow protocol to be.
Shall I read the next
Start.
application? This is from Carol Cernak. About this, she asked that this be read out loud. And Carol, there are two words that I'm not going to read, to keep it. PC. Not PC, but I just. PG, thank you. Dan Welsh, as a public official receiving a salary for more than the past decade, you should keep your global opinions to yourself. You obviously feel guilt about your privileged upbringing. Your narrative doesn't make you smarter or more knowledgeable, so please shut up. You have nothing to add, and your title as councilman should be considered under the ethics committee. By the way, thanks for sending along the survey results for Prop 1. You and your committee failed my request as a tax-paying member of this community. Remember, if a town official says it, there is precedent to follow it through. You are not what we need to represent. Go away. Carol Cernak.
Yeah.
This is from Robin Burston. Lewisboro Town Board. It recently came to my attention that Dan Welsh, who was just reelected to the town board, posted some very upsetting posts about the horrific acts that occurred on October 7th in Israel. While I believe that he has every right to say whatever he wants, the kind of rhetoric in his posts is extremely divisive and has no place in this town. Dan was voted to represent all the people in town, and his comments certainly don't reflect that. I also find it interesting he decided to post his comments only after the election occurred, thus depriving the voters of the knowledge of his true feelings. It was very shady and calculating for Dan to do this, but not surprising given his holier than thou attitude towards the constituents of this town. I am not sure what recourse the board has to censure a member, but if they have the authority to do so, I think Dan should be censured for his remarks. I ask that you kindly read this email during the comment section of the board meeting on Monday, 11/27. Thank you for your attention. Robin Burston, Vista, New York.
Okay, moving on to communications. I just have one piece, and this is just a letter from the New York State Department of Transportation dated November 8th. Basically, it's to inform the town that the New York State Department of Transportation plans to resurface portions of Route 35 and Route 121. So this is the paving project that we've been talking about, and this basically formalizes the fact that they're going to do this, and the project will begin in the spring construction season of 2024. And this information is posted on the website under the DOT page. Next, consent agenda, which includes approval of minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so we don't have any old business, new business. There's distributed to the board, the collective bargaining agreement, for the, highway department with the Teamsters, local 456. And this is an authorization for the supervisor to sign. It says memorandum of agreement, but it's actually the collective bargaining agreement.
It got ratified today by the rank and file, correct?
Correct,
Okay.
yes, yes. Okay.
I made the motion. I'll motion.
She motioned,
I'll second.
Roll call there.
roll call. Yeah, Rich, aye.
Mary Shaw, aye.
Aye.
Andrew Arendo, aye.
Yeah, well,
Okay. Next is resolution to accept the proposal, I'm sorry, the interim MS4 and authorizing supervisor to sign. This is something we do every 6 months.
Twice a year, right?
Twice a year. And basically the MS4 is, it stands for Small Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, which the town of Lewisboro is. And this is work that's done by Kellett Sessions, on our behalf. And basically it's a biannual checkup on the status of the town's continued progress toward meeting the stormwater goals, which are outlined in more detail in the annual report filed every June 1st.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next is is a resolution to accept a proposal for Martinez Carpentry and Roofing for the Arlington Farm Parks Barn roof replacement. Joe Smith, our facilities manager, went out and received 3 quotes. Martinez Carpentry was the lowest. And this is work that's going to be, we have to pay for it, but we'll get reimbursement from FEMA. And it's related to damage that was sustained during Superstorm Sandy.
So we should get dollar for dollar reimbursement? from
Correct.
FEMA, hopefully? Okay.
Correct.
So
For
moved.
this, yeah,
Yeah, so moved.
Second,
discussion.
Roll call.
I'll just add that there's a second roof, which is out to bid, because it's a larger figure, which is also going to be reimbursed by FEMA. So we're waiting on that, and I'll have that from the board when it comes through. Need roll call?
Yeah.
Okay,
Expenditure.
roll call on the expenditure. Rich,
Aye.
Mary,
Shaw, I.
Tony, I.
Andrea Rendo, aye.
And Welsh, I.
Okay. Next, we have, this is a resolution to authorize agreement with Lewisboro Construction Associates to temporarily store a work trailer on town property. There's some question council have put together a revocable license agreement. But we agreed to go into executive session to discuss like the
duration
parameters
and
of
the
it.
terms, and then you can vote it at some point after.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure you're.
So basically just, yeah, we'll not table it, but we'll do it in executive
Well, it's
session.
on the agenda, so that you can table it now, and then you can have a motion to take it off the table once you decide.
Right.
What your final terms.
Okay.
I second the tabling.
Okay, discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Next is a resolution approving Philip Holt as a member of the OSPAC Open Space and Preserves Advisory Committee, who he is replacing Priscilla Schaefer.
So moved.
Okay, second
Second.
discussion,
I just want to thank Priscilla for her service.
yes. Thank you, Priscilla.
Great volunteer.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Next is, it's really a resolution to hire a new parks groundskeeper in the Parks and Recreation Department. This is someone that was, taking the place of, a member who just resigned. And Mike Gallagher will be replacing Zachary Amerling.
Any cost differential between?
No.
Okay, so moved.
It's union rate.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Roll call that to
Oh.
hire, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Rich,
Aye.
Shaw, I.
Tony, I.
Andrea Rendo, aye.
And Welsh, I.
And next we have a resolution authorizing the extended lunch on Thursday for an employee function, Thursday, December 16th. Snow day to Friday, December 17th.
Wait, is.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
December 16th.
I think it's December, the invitation said December 14th.
Oh.
Thursday,
Oh,
14th.
sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's the
It's-
highway Christmas.
It's the
stuff.
highway
I thought
employee
that was on
function.
Wednesday.
No, it's
on
Thursday.
14th.
Okay.
Oh. Okay,
That's
so sorry about
I
that. December 14th,
respectfully
with the snow date of Friday, December 15th.
correct.
Okay.
So highways asking alternative for a snow day? Okay.
All right, so it's the 15th.
Be John's 14th.
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 That's right, Friday's the 15th, got it.
I move.
This, second
Second.
discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And I have one new item. This is came up from Westchester County today in the mail. So we have access to Westchester records online. And the reason I'm putting this on as a new item is because they would like this memorandum of understanding to be returned before December 10th, which is before our next town board meeting. And basically it's an MOU, which upon council review.
Right, it's just for
It's a
your
standard-
free access to their land record system.
Correct.
And it gives you a certain number of licenses so that you have access to that if you need it.
It's access that we already have.
Correct.
But
This is
basically,
for
it extends
24.
it for another year, for twenty
And
twenty-four.
it extended to all the municipalities.
So do we have to make a motion to enter into the memorandum of understanding and authorize the supervisor to sign?
I would do that.
So moved.
And seconded.
Just, they're giving us enough licenses for our needs.
Yeah, there's a list of folks attached to this list of people that have or authorized to access this system.
And they're giving us enough licenses for what our needs.
Correct. Yeah, that's okay.
The keyword is free.
Yeah.
Free.
Free.
More than zero.
And this
Yes.
came from the Westchester County Clerk's Office.
And we looked at the list of people.
Correct, that's yeah.
Yeah.
It's
All right.
There's a correction that needs to be or an update.
You have a motion and a second in discussion.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So next we have public comment number 2 for new business only. Would anyone here like to talk or comment on the new business items?
No, I just have a question. Do you guys not comment back on people's comments? Or do you not denounce and like rude? This is like the Board of Ed where you just listen. and you
Correct,
don't
it's part
comment
of,
back?
it's part of the meeting protocol, Robert's rules, and yeah, we don't respond back to comments.
Sometimes we take the opportunity to comment during polling of the board in response to situations that were brought up to the meetings, or we make comments regarding events or circumstances.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. So during polling of the board, we can respond to things that have been said during public comment. Okay, so again, public comment number 2, any on new business, anyone here? Anyone on Zoom?
Yes, Carol Cernak, I'm asking you to unmute.
Hi, Carol Cernak, South Cell, New York. I would just like some clarification regarding the roof replacement at Onatru. Tony spoke about a second bid, and I'm not sure what that's all about. So I thought you accepted a bid and then you spoke about a second bid. So I'm just wondering what that's about. And the other thing I have to say is that maybe Dan should apply for the position at Parks and Recreation. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Anybody else? Okay, next we have approval of claims, so I motion
Like that?
to approve claims. Second,
You do. Second.
discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, polling of the board. I'll start with Andrew.
So obviously, we've all been hearing a lot over the weekend about the comments that Dan posted on his Facebook page. And as a result of the comments that Dan posted on his Facebook page, many of you have asked or inquired as to what the rest of the town board members' positions are. And many of you know that as a member of the town board, I've always said that really issues of national or things that you would elect your congressman or your senator to deal with aren't issues that we necessarily deal with here. And we should try to keep our comments and our opinions to things that affect the job that we were elected to do. That said, I too have read Councilman Dan Welch's posts and the comments and the posts related to it. I would like to thank Councilman Richard Sclaren for his well thought out and articulate comment in response, and to lend my support to all that he said. I hold our First Amendment rights in very high regard and do not feel that any voice should be silenced just because we may disagree. That said, as an elected town official, we have a duty to serve the people of the town of Lewisboro. And sometimes that may mean putting aside what we want to say in order to keep focus on the job that we were elected to do. Mr. Welch's post in his capacity as a public official has distracted us from our jobs as members of the town board and has offended and angered many of our residents. I can only hope Mr. Welch thinks twice before posting such reckless comments again over the next 4 years as he sits as your councilman. Or we have heard the comments of the people here tonight asking for his resignation. I cannot speak to that. I know that I have spent several hours going over the comments We have spent time here this evening, listening to the comments and spending time on this matter, where, as your elected officials, we could have spent that time focusing on many of the issues that were on the agenda tonight, but is important to our residents, and I feel it necessary to speak to it. And so, again, I voice my support of everything that Mr. Sklarin said. I don't think that I could have said it better, and I'm very sorry for the pain that it's caused our community.
Mary.
I support what I support what Rich has said in response to Dan's statements. I am against terrorism and gun violence. I'm against anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, as well as anti-Arab and Asian hate. I'm also against misogyny and LGBTQIA+ hate, as well as anti-Black hate. Because I believe in equity, diversity, and inclusion, I try to meet people where they are, respect differences, foster connections, and make a difference for all who live and work in Lewisboro. I try to model a calm and civil approach to working together and never ask anyone to do anything that I'm not willing to do myself, including trash pickup after the fireworks, or allowing myself to be dumped so the library can add to its operating funds. I hope we can find a way forward for the good of Lewisboro and future generations.
Rich.
Next one. One thing that before I circle back to that, and I spoke to Mary about it as Parks and Rec liaison. Yeah, so had some communications with Bill Tackler, and there's a pool subcommittee with Parks and Rec, and just they're interested in having full committee status in the new year.
Having what kind of status?
Like full committee status,
full committee
a
status.
full committee. And they're all set with members, and spoke with Bill, and they have the blessing of Nicole on that. So I think that's a good idea. So they'll have the same process as any other committee, which de facto they kind of do already as far as monthly meetings, and people have expertise in the area. So all on board as far as formalizing that in the new year, and we can maybe at the organizational meeting, have a resolution as far as setting that up with the existing members and proceeding forward on that.
If I may interrupt, I forgot to mention that I've been working a lot with emergency response and first responders, and I wanted to send a note of gratitude to every first responder, because I know it's been a busy few days. There have been a lot of calls, especially in Vista, so I'm grateful for that. But we need you all to sign up for the New York Alert, which we're the first town in the county of Westchester to be signed up for this new system of alert. And there are 3 levels of alert: general alert, emergency alert, and turn your lights on and lock your doors because someone's in the neighborhood. So it's been used like that upstate, and we're the first ones downstate to use it. So please sign up. I will have information on how to sign up given to the webmaster, so you'll be able to see on the town website. Thank you for letting me interrupt.
Sure. Teamwork. Second issue, just wanted to congratulate the board on our work today and passing what I think is a fiscally responsible budget, and listening to the taxpayers and citizens as far as placing a priority on roads moving forward in the new year. So it's a successful meeting, and glad we work collaboratively towards that. And I think we're going to move forward on the tree ordinance with the change. We'll get that done, and we've got a lot of valuable input as far as the process. We'll end up with a better legislative product at the end of the day. And I guess last, certainly not least, I thank you, Andrea, for your comments. I appreciate that. And Dan and I have known Dan a long time. Dan and I do engage periodically in person and on Facebook, just always, honest and candid, dialogue. I guess my only thought that I wanted to bring forward is that nobody is more tolerant and aware to people in our community than Dan historically. Everything from our Juneteenth and Pride celebrations and everything that we do to try and bring our community together. But I guess that my thought is that, Dan, in this situation, you have not conveyed the same human sensitivity for Lewisboro's Jewish community as you have to other community groups in the same way that you typically would. So that gave me a little bit of pause, and that's just something to reflect in the continued dialogue. And that's really all I wanted to say about that. And I am the only Jewish member of this board, proud Jewish American, been in this community for 25 years. And going door to door over the campaign, which we recently finished for months, this is a large Jewish community in this town, and I support that community. And I also support and want to express my appreciation and my gratitude to the overwhelming majority of the Lewisboro community, how we've been generally coming together as a community, celebrating our diversity, celebrating each other, and hopefully we'll make sure we get back on that direction, which has been a positive direction for our community and making forward progress over the last number of years. And hopefully we'll be able to regroup and move forward in that direction into the new year and beyond. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, thanks.
I think that's the second
Yeah, go ahead.
that last wish. Again, I'm here listening to everybody today. My highest priority is the end of the violence. I've been an anti-war, anti-violence activist for probably 40 years. And I think everybody who knows me knows that, and knows that I've been, on my spare time out on the street for that. And that's what I want to see happen right now. It's the end of the bombing, the violence. And but I understand, and again, everybody has very valid feelings and backgrounds on this, and listening and trying to learn from that. But that dialogue, I'm not trying to, never wanted to make it a town board matter, and it was always my, on my personal side, whatever. Besides that, going out tomorrow with the consultant from the county to check out sites for potential electric car charging. They've got a great program where they're helping subsidize that, and that together with the Make Ready state subsidies could mean it's all zero cost for us. So looking forward to the results of that.
Thanks. Okay, so on the budget, yeah, I'm glad to see we finalized the budget. We obviously I would have liked to have kept within the tax cap, but I'm happy that we're allocating, regardless of where it's coming from, additional funds towards paving, which is ultimately it's an amount that we haven't, I don't think, ever allocated to paving in a budget season. So that's a good thing about this. So thank you to the town board members for working on this and hashing it out. In response to Carol Cernak's question about the barn, so Carol, the quote that we approved is below the requirement for going out to bid. It was based on an RFP, request for proposal. So that's the one that we approved tonight. The maintenance barn is a larger project and requires it exceeds the threshold, which requires that we go out to bid. So the bid is out. We expect results this week, and then we'll make a decision on that. And that will also, like I said, will also be a FEMA reimbursement. Just a couple of announcements. We do have a Christmas tree lighting at the town park next week, Monday, December 4th, I believe, right? It's great. It's 6:30.
Check the Parks and Rec.
But check the Parks and Rec calendar, but it is December 4th. And then we have a menorah lighting here. It was advertised for 6:30, but it's actually going to be earlier at sunset. There's a little mistake there. So we're going to be here at 4:45. So hopefully we'll get a lot of people come out for that.
It's the
I'm
7th.
sorry, Thursday, December 7th in front of the library. Thank you, Cindy. And we'll have hot chocolate, chocolate gelt, and you get to see, huh?
Donuts.
You could have donuts, absolutely. And
What's the name
yeah.
of Rabbi Karen?
Rabbi Raleigh, Rolle.
And you get to see the menorah that I happened to pick up a few years back in Brooklyn, New York. So yeah, we need to do something about that. Yeah, get a new one. But it's good for this year. We're gonna make it work. So hopefully everybody will come out. It's been a success in the past. We've had a good showing of folks. So I'd like to see everybody there.
We'll miss Neil.
So yeah, Neil unfortunately is in Florida, so yeah, he's not going to be around. There was a question on the flag, Elizabeth, you brought that up. So we took down the flags during Veterans Day.
Yes.
Because we wanted to have the service flags up, and then afterwards we took down the service flags, and they or two later we put back the Israeli-Ukraine flag. But it was, brought to our attention that putting up foreign flags on public municipal property is illegal in New York State. Thus, we took them both down again. So that's the reason the flags are not up. We still have, right after the terrible terrorist attack, I had the front lights, the bulbs replaced. So we still have blue bulbs, and they're still there. So that will remain lit. And when you go out to that, you see them lit.
It's just
Just for
Ukrainian flag was up a really long time. Now all of this happens, and now the flag's gone.
Yeah,
I don't think that's
yeah.
a coincidence.
It would have stayed up longer if we had not, if it wasn't brought to our attention that there's this law. And I'm being honest with you.
It's regulations. It's state regulations on flags.
And it was actually, Andrew brought that to my attention, so that's when I first heard of it, and yeah, so, yeah. But that's the reason.
I've brought it up several times in the past with regard to other flags, but after Veterans Day, it just seemed appropriate that if they were gonna follow the regulations and the flags were down there.
Well, they will back up then. And then all of this
They,
happens.
no, they were up there, after they were up, that's when I found out from Andrew that it's a state regulation that does not allow that. Yeah. So that's that.
Is that a different location? It's not in front of the town building?
Any municipal.
It says public buildings, article number 5, public buildings generally. And then 141, display of foreign flags on public buildings, display of foreign flags on public buildings. It shall not be lawful to display the flag or emblem of any foreign country upon any state, county, or municipal building, provided, however, that whenever any foreigner shall become the guest of the United States, the state, or any city upon public proclamation by the governor or mayor of such city, the flag of the country of such public guest shall be a citizen, may be displayed on such public buildings.
From the New York Public Buildings Law.
It's,
Yeah, so,
This isn't to say that we haven't received lots of feedback on all sides about whether the flags Israeli or Ukrainian should remain flying or not flying, because we've gotten lots of comments from residents throughout the town, both in favor of and against having the flags on in front of the building. So brought us to the attention, because that's not an easy decision to take them down once they're up. So bringing the regulation back to the forefront, saying, look, this is what we're supposed to follow. So it's better to follow the regulation and not have to displease someone, because if that's the rule, then it's easier to say no flags than to say we're going to end up picking and choosing what flags to go up, right? Because then that becomes a slippery slope, and we don't want to be there. We talked a lot tonight about being a unified community, and so you don't want to start picking and choosing. So it's either all flags or no flags, and the regulation says no flags.
Thank you. So, yeah, and just another point I want to make is, when we're, we sit up here at the dais, words are important, so we have to be careful, personal posts, public, town supervisor Facebook, my personal Facebook. I think we have an obligation to really think about things before we state them publicly. So, yeah, I think we can all learn from the situation and do better and focus on town businesses, which is where we should be focused. But I appreciate all the comments tonight. Thank you. Okay.
Next meeting.
Announcements. Next meeting, Tuesday, December 12th, 7:30 PM here at the townhouse. And motion to go into executive session to discuss the
Personnel.
real estate issue.
Oh, sorry, don't we have a personnel?
No.
We wanted to discuss on the first.
No, we already appointed the person. It was Lewisboro. Thank you all for coming out tonight, folks on Zoom. Thank you.
A second in the motion.
Oh, motion, do I have a second? Second, all in favor?
Aye.